Hey everybody, I don't know what the lighting looks like. The camera looks great, but often people complain that it's too dark on their computer, but I try to do my best. No baby, don't push on the tripod. Yeah, I'm sorry. So, I've got my coil assembly here, and I am going to now take the wires and I'm going to run them through the holes here to the other side. So I'm probably going to be very awkward looking as I do this. There's a rubber band, which I can barely get. I think I brought needle nose pliers with me. You know, back in the day when I worked on electronics a lot, I used to keep long fingernails. And people always mocked me, but I was like, I don't care. I work in electronics. I need long fingernails. And now I remember why. It helps a lot to have longer fingernails. So, I have to see what I got here. There's the one. Alright, I'm going to look at the diagram because I want to make sure that I do this exactly right. I think I'm going to come out this way. And the other one has to be done in a mirror image of this one. Now these wires have to run to the other side of the plexiglass. So, this is there. I'm going to have that one on the outside. And I'm just going to do one here, and then you guys can trust me that I'll do the rest the same. And this one, the outer wire, which is the last wire in the coil, I'm going, yeah, I'm going to go. Makes sense to have the inside wire, the first wire, just so I know what I got going on the other side. The inside wire, which is the beginning of the coil, comes out from the inside, is going to go on the inside of the first hole here. And then the outer wire, which is the end of the coil, will go on the second hole out. So it actually sort of makes sense here. Okay? Now I got them running out here. And I'm going to go along and proceed with all the others, running them through the holes, and then we'll be back in a minute. Hey everybody, I got a different lamp set up here so I can see better. I myself couldn't see so well, so I got this little antique brass lamp, actually little, it's a floor lamp that I had for forever, and I got an LED light bulb in it. So anyway, now I can see better, and I think you can see what I've done. I've run the wires from the coils up through to the long side of the bolt on the back side, you would say, of the stator plates. And I've given this a lot of consideration and thought. I think I've been analyzing the instruction manual and photos for about 30 minutes to make sure that when I do this, I want this to look good. Alright, I'm not just going to slap this together. This is a beautiful designed motor, and I really want to keep it that way. So I want this to look good as well as be functional. Went to Radio Shack. It was the only place that had 18 gauge solid wire, and they had a 3-color kit, a 3-color pack. So I've got 15 feet each of 3 different colors, which is sort of fine because it took my decision away from me. The original inventor used solid, one solid color, but I was thinking about going with one color for the inner wire and another color for the outer wire, so almost like saying plus minus, you could say, I guess, on the coils. And well, since I didn't have the option, you could only get the 18 gauge solid wire in 3-pack multicolored kit here, so I chose to go with red and green for now. Or you know what, I'll go with standard red and black. Not that it's going to be specifically plus minus on these coils, but it'll at least give me a good identifier to which side of the coil I'm dealing with when I'm working on the experiments that are to come in the future. So we have 2 colors, red and black. Now I won't bore you with all the work and all the soldering and all the time it takes, but I'm going to clip the wires a little bit shorter, and I'm going to strip the insulation off. And what I do is I use a cigarette lighter and very carefully heat the tip. That's what I've used for years and years and years. And then I take the end of a plier and I scrape it a little. I may show you that or not. I'm not quite sure yet, but I'm going to shorten the wires, strip the insulation, fasten on the colored wires, and run them neatly around the board. And then we'll get onto the other starter plate and see what it'll take yet to get this machine running. Probably not today. The time is really running by, but we'll see. Maybe in the next day or so I'll get this running. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Hey everybody. I just want to show you what I'm doing. It's really, really slow and tedious work, so I'm not going to bore you with all the soldering work. I'm cutting the wire short, and then I'm using the red on the outside of the coil, and the black wire on the inside of the coil, the inner wire. And I put on some zip ties here to hold things in place. And as I go along, I can close the zip ties. Here I held that in place. And then, as the inventor suggests, I'll super glue these together later for a nice appearance. And while I'm soldering, I'm using a piece of cardboard in case any solder drops. I just put the cardboard underneath where I'm soldering. And I have heat shrink tubing, which comes in longer pieces or various sizes depending on what you buy. And I'm putting it over each solder joint, and I'll show you this one. I don't have anything in here yet to shrink the heat shrink tubing, so I'm just sliding them over. But here's the solder joint right here, and I'm sliding the heat shrink tubing over the solder joint. And then when I heat that, that'll shrink and hold that in place, permanently hiding the bare exposed wire. And then I'll go ahead and continue running these along. When I'm done, I'll straighten them out, glue them together. So I'm about to put another zip tie in for the next point right here. So what we do is go in, lift this up. I'm going to have to clean this with this acrylic glass with some what do you call that cloth again? Oh, I can't think of it. Microfiber. And then I'm just keeping them inside there to keep them nice and orderly. And I'll zip tie it all together when I'm ready to neaten this up and close it off when I'm all done. But the zip ties do help keep them from flopping around too much out of control. So I've got 1, 2, I'm going to do the third coil on this side, and then I'll have 1, 2, 3 coils coming around on this side with the 2 different colors. I did a miscalculation on the amount of wire I have on these spools. They really don't give you much anymore. These, for your money, they don't give you much at all. 15 feet is not going to be much, because I'm using almost, about 2 feet or so, and then I get down to the shorter wire and I use a little bit less, so I won't be able to complete both halves of the stator of the coil halves. I'll be able to do one and probably most of not the other before I run out of wire. So it'll be another trip to Radio Shack, which is, it's frustrating. I should have thought, but at $20 or at $10 for 3 little bits of wire is a lot of money to hand out. And then again, this is a very beautiful and not cheap motor in the first place, so I guess what's $20 in the grand scheme of things. So I'll let you watch me do one. Maybe I'll speed it up, in case I don't want to bore you with this. Check my battery power. Battery's getting low on me. Maybe I won't. Basically what I do, I'll take the outer wire here from the coil, and I'll cut it. The outer wire is a little bit shorter cut. Okay. And then I strip it with the knife. I should have cut that one a little bit longer because these wires are all in my way. I'll strip that with the knife. It's tedious work, but I started out doing a lighter, but the lighter leaves some residue. I used to occasionally burn my wires, and you can burn that enamel off, but it's easier if you have longer wires you can work with. So anyway, I stripped that all off, that enamel, all the way around. Maybe I should have done it before I mounted the coils, but anyway, it is how it is now. And just how you work with magnet wire. You got to strip that wire out, that enamel off with magnet wire. Anyway, and then you have to look all the way around and make sure you don't miss any on that wire anywhere. There's some. Make sure you don't miss any of that enamel, because that's non-conducting enamel. It's an insulator. Okay, and then I'll take the red wire, which is the outer, so I can identify these easier later. I got my little wire strippers, 18 gauge. Don't want to make it too long, just enough to wrap around that piece of wire here. Wrap the wire around it. Okay, now I'm going to wrap this around 2-3 times around this thicker copper wire. Okay, and then I bring up my soldering iron, slip my cardboard in place for protection, and we hold the soldering iron in place, and I hold the solder onto the soldering iron until it melts. Let me zoom in on that for you. I used to be really good at soldering, but I haven't done much soldering in quite a few years, so I won't make any promises that I'm going to be really, really good. Okay. So I hold the soldering iron on, and I'm hitting the soldering iron with the solder until the solder melts on the iron. Okay. And then it's going to flow onto the wire. Once the wire gets hot enough, the solder is going to flow onto the wire. Alright, we got it. So then I'll wrap the heat shrink tubing on. Now, of course, now my light is blinding you. It's funny that generally I don't have enough light in this place, and now I got too much light blinding you. Isn't that ironic? Cut that so I have enough room to work with it later. Take a piece of my heat shrink tubing. Got enough for 2 more. And I'll slip it on and feed it down the end. Right over that joint. Okay, and there's that one. Now, I think it's getting time for another zip tie. And then I'll do the same with the other wire. I'm going to cut that one a little bit longer, so they're offset from each other in case anything ever does go wrong. We don't have any short circuiting. So I'll solder this one on just like I did the other, and then I'll do these others over here. It's a tedious process, and I'm trying to be very neat and take my time with it. So it is taking a long time, but I really want it to look good. I have one side done, neatly laid out. I haven't glued these ends together yet. And I'm putting the, I just wanted to show you how I prepared the other side. Putting the zip ties in. These will help me hold the wires into place while I work. Oh, here's only 2. Interesting. We have less to work with over here on this side. Let me see, here I needed 3. There's only 2. Here. Well, maybe I can squeeze them in. I'm just looking at how this side came together. There was 1, 1, 1. 1. I was able to go through 2 holes each, and then here I had 3, which I have there, so maybe I'll be able to squeeze them in the same. I want to keep this pretty much the same through and through, one side just like the other, as much as I can. There's a deer hair in the way. You might notice I'm working on a deer skin covered table. good soft protective surface for the plexiglass. Figure it's the best way to work. Now I've got this wire already prepared and this one stripped. Give it a twist around and hope this soldering joint goes better than that other one I tried to show you on video. I keep a wet paper towel on standby. You're supposed to use like a sponge, but I use a paper towel. It works just as fine. Oh, there we go. Now we got a good joint. I had to clean the tip. If you don't get a good solder joint, you give the tip a wipe with a wet sponge or a wet paper towel. A damp paper towel, I should say. And then you get a better connection. I used to teach soldering in high school. My teacher would leave the class in Skill Center and leave me in charge. That was a long time ago. So, getting an idea where this is going to run and how long it has to be to come out and meet these others. And then cut it off. And hopefully I'm leaving myself enough to work with out on the diodes, the rectifiers later on. Okay, now I'll do the black and then I'll continue on with the next two coils. Oh yeah, I have to feed in the piece of heat shrink tubing. Cut myself off about 1 inch. Try to keep it uniform across the entire production here, so it looks good. And feed that over the solder joint, and then lay the wire in place, and on to the next. Okay, so I'll do all these and we'll be back in a little bit here, guys. We're down to the last two solder joints, and I'm going to wipe the tip before I solder this time. I want to show you something else I did here before we proceed to the next solder joint. There we go. The solder is supposed to suck up into the wires and flow onto the wires. There's a beautiful solder joint. That's what I'm talking about. See, it's when you're trying to record a video, you're not really paying attention to your work as well. That is what I'm talking about. So, then what I've been doing is folding this straight so the little wire runs parallel to the big wire. Alright, and then I'll run this over here to join these guys and figure out how long we want to make it and cut it. Okay, now might as well do the last one. I already stripped the wire. Did I? Oh, I thought I did. Alright, well, you can watch me do this one through and through. I cut it to size, but I didn't strip it yet. So I just take the knife and I scrape the enamel off. It's hard to see. I started out using a headlamp, but I moved my floor lamp closer to me so I could see better. And you want to look all the way around the wire. Make sure you don't miss any enamel. All the way around. You don't want any enamel on there, because the enamel will insulate it and block the solder from connecting, which will block electricity from flowing. Okay, now run this wire out, strip it, 18 gauge, and I work neat. I throw that immediately in the garbage can, which is right next to me. I clean the soldering iron over the garbage can, and I toss every little bit of garbage right away as I work. No mess, especially when you got cats. You don't want that solder on the ground. You don't want to risk harming your cats. They like to put everything in their mouth and play with it. This wire, the last, is giving me some trouble. Now, if it gives you some trouble, you can take that and twist it around better with a pair of pliers just to get that flat. There we go. Little knob flat on there. And then I lay down my cardboard, take my soldering iron, give it a clean real quick, just a little twist in a wet paper towel or sponge, and then it's gonna flow. I wish I could show you this well, but I've done soldering videos before. If you want to see that, remind me and I'll share you the links with you. I think I've done how to solder videos. Clean the tip when you're done again, give it a wipe with your paper towel or sponge. And then we've got our final solder joint. Okay, run the wire, cut it, and then I'll show you what I've done that I wanted to share with you. I realized when I ran my wire I had them going over the hole, and this is one of the frame holes, so we don't want that. So I rerouted them a little and just bent them and then ran them through another zip tie. Here I had them over in these two, which ran across here, and I rerouted it and then up. And then what I did, the original instructions and the original prototype didn't have all these holes. So I think they later added these for exactly this purpose, because it works beautifully with zip ties. So then I zip tied each pair of wires together here, and this is perfect for me. This is absolutely beautiful. So I've got no complaints. I've got my pairs held together nice and neat. I'm satisfied with that. I'm very pleased. Now I left 2 pieces of heat shrink tubing. Slip that on over these 2 guys. I still have to get some hot air. I have somewhere a hot air gun. When I did my solar panels back in the day, I had to heat the what was that called? Oh, but I forgot the call. I want to say EVA, is that right? The sheeting on the solar panels, I had to heat it with a hot air gun. So what I'll do is I'll put a protective piece of cardboard under there, heat them gently, and that'll shrink that heat shrink tubing onto there, forming a really nice bond and protective cover. So, and this side also then, I routed the wires and I made sure I went around the hole for the frame. And as I did with the other, I'm just going to tie these together in their little pairs with the zip ties. I want them though to come along and follow the same path as the others. I know it's hard for me to show you what I'm doing as I work here, but I want them to pretty much follow the same path of the others and be all pretty close together. And that'll also give them strength in because those end in copper wires with no other protections here, so I'm going to tie these all 3 together outside the edge of the board to make sure they're safe and don't have too much strain on them ever. Where's my, there we are. Okay, nice and neat and flat. Now I'm going to bring these 2 together here, just like that. Zip tie it, and then I'll tie them all 3 together just for safety on those guys so they're good and protected. Oh, that one confuses me because it's opposite, I see. Alright, I'll twist it around on the outside edge. Tie them up tight real quick, nice and tight, real close. Okay, now I hope my battery's holding up. Is it? Good, good. I'll cut these off. I just want you to see what I'm doing here, to see how neat I'm trying to build this. I mean, this motor deserves to be built right. My old clunker homemade Bedini made of garbage pieces, literally. My Bedini motor was made literally out of garbage pieces. I'll do a recap on that one day. That was back before I had cameras. Alright, and then I'll work these together so there's no strain on them. All these guys together. I'll do that separately because I want to take my time and make that look nice. So there we have one half of the Stator assembly wired and ready to go. And now I'm going to check for continuity. Tomorrow I'll strip all these wires and make sure with an ohm meter that every single coil is properly connected before I proceed with assembling the entire system together.